Greetings everybody around the world. It's time once again for Ancient Aliens Radio. This is the dedicated radio show for the cast of Ancient Aliens. Here we interview authors and researchers as an ongoing investigation into the ancient alien theory. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or subscribe to the YouTube channel Ancient Aliens Radio. And in just a moment I'm going to be talking to Michael J.S. Carter. Michael is a returning guest. He has been on the show before talking about UFOs in the Bible. But I've asked Michael to come back today because I'm aware of Michael being a contactee as well. Michael's a very interesting guy. He's a reverend. I should have introduced him as Reverend Michael J.S. Carter, but today we'll just talk to him as Michael. But Michael is also into Reiki and astrology and a multitude of different philosophies. And what an interesting guy to talk about this today. And without further ado, let's bring on our guest today. Hi, Michael.
James, it's great to hear from you again, man. Happy New Year. We're 30 days in, but I haven't spoken to you in a while, and I hope you're doing well, and thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here, Michael. It really is, and I had such a fantastic time talking to you last time.
Oh, it was great.
Yeah, we had a great show, and it was a quick show. It was a great show. I guess, Michael, you had told me the last time you had a contactee experience. I didn't want to go into it on the show because I wanted to do the last show some justice. However, I have asked you back here today to talk about that. Before I do, maybe just give the listeners a little bit of background who you are, Michael, from your Ancient Aliens History Channel appearances to what you do day to day.
Sure. Okay, first of all, good evening, everybody. My name is Michael Carter. I'm an ordained interfaith minister. I received my divinity degree, my Master's of Divinity from Union Theological Seminary in New York City. Proud to say one of the top seminaries in the country. I now serve a Unitarian Universalist congregation here in the mountains, the beautiful mountains of western North Carolina. I'm also a diversity consultant and trainer. My day-to-day life is pretty kind of boring. I mean, not boring in the sense of, oh God, what am I doing? But, I serve a church. We have about 90 members. We're small but mighty, and we're growing. I am the proud dad of a 7-year-old who will be 8 next month, and I'm married. And so my day-to-day life pretty much consists of doing a lot of pastoral care, writing of sermons, of course always researching and thinking about UFOs and religion. I am a frequent guest on the History Channel's Ancient Alien series, which is doing wonderfully, by the way, in their 6th season. And, just trying to, I'm a Reiki practitioner, although I don't know what's coming through my hands now. I have a book out called Alien Scriptures, Extraterrestrials in the Holy Bible, but we also talk about the Quran as well, and my hypothesis is, as some of you are well familiar with, that at least our monotheistic religions, I would go so far as to say, most of them, and not just the big three, if you will, were influenced directly or indirectly by off-planet intelligences. And I am also back in the 50s they called us contactees. I've been called worse, but I'm a contactee or experiencer and have been for most of my life, but my adult life since back December 28, 1989. But I did have experiences as a child, but could not articulate them. Mm-hmm. So that kind of gives me a unique perspective as not only being able to write about my findings as far as the Bible, but also that I've had the experiences as well.
Which came first, Michael, the experience as the contactee or the looking into UFOs in the Bible?
The experiences, James. Yeah.
Michael, for answers, was it like a curiosity driving force for answers, I suppose?
Well, you know what it is, James. You're exactly right. But the experiences came first. I was always interested in religion. Always. When I was a young child, I always knew that I was going to be a minister or a priest of some kind. Now, that could have been a secular priest. It could have been a therapist or something like that. But I always knew. but I wasn't a Trekkie. I'm still not. I just wasn't into science fiction at all. And, which may seem strange to some people, I still have not watched a Star Trek episode at 56 years young. I'm curious about it, but I just haven't. But on December 28th, 1989, I was coming back from Mexico, seeing the pyramids on the Yucatan Peninsula and Chichen Itza and Tulum. I write about this in the book. And I got home that evening, and I went to a party. A friend of mine wanted me to go to a party. I was exhausted from flying, but I went anyway. I stayed for about 90 minutes, didn't have anything to drink. I think I had like some potato salad, and he had some cold cuts there. I stayed about 90 minutes to say I did show up. It was freezing that night. And I caught the subway back home. And I was exhausted. I went to bed, and something just woke me up in the middle of the night. I didn't have to go to the bathroom. And I looked at the edge of my bed. My room was lit up. There was a blue light in my room that first came in the room, lit up my whole room, and there was a being at the edge of my bed, staring at me. It was at the edge of my bed. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. It had a silver, like aluminum foil colored, tight-fitting jumpsuit. It was white, chalk-colored with the wraparound eyes and the pear-shaped head. And I pulled the covers up over my head. And I heard this whooshing sound, and I felt the temperature change. It's almost as if I had left the room. And I pulled the covers back down. No one was there. I was in my room. But I could have sworn to you that I was outside. That, my girlfriend at the time did not wake up. So what had happened, it's like I'm thinking about it now. I went to a psychiatrist because I thought I was crazy.
Yeah. Incredibly frightening, I suppose. Incredibly frightening and fearful.
I'm telling you it was. I am telling you it was. And it started happening every new moon and every full moon for about 6 to 8 months. But how it would happen would be I would be paralyzed. I couldn't move. But I would see them come in the room. And they would talk to me with pictures in my head. Only one time I heard words come from one, and that was from a reptilian being. Yeah. But I must tell you, Gabe, nothing has ever happened to me bad, if you will. I've been regressed by the late Bud Hopkins and Gene Mundy. They've both passed on. And my last visit, now years have gone by sometimes between visits. The last visit I had was July 4th of 2013 at 9:49 a.m. What? p.m. I had a blood clot in my leg that I had developed in March of last year. I was on Coumadin, and I was injecting myself with something called a Nexaparin. Don't know why it came, how it came. And one night on July 4th, it was a rainy night, they canceled the fireworks here. And I remember lying in bed, and I had a lot of friends who fought in the Vietnam War. And the lightning and thunder was so bad, and I was thinking to myself, this must be what they had gone through trying to sleep in a war zone. Because they would tell me about some of the battles they fought in and just what it was like to be in Vietnam. And I was lying on my stomach, and I heard my cell phone go beep, beep, beep. And I turned around, and there was a being in my room, and it shot me with this little, like, I don't know, it was a ray. It just came like out of their hands. And it hit me in my stomach and in the side as I was turning around. And then they just dissolved, like the molecule, they just dissolved right in my room. The next morning, my leg was healed.
Wow. Fascinating.
Yeah, my leg was healed. It looked like the veins were wrapped differently. I had no more clots. I went to the doctor. They didn't know how to explain it. Of course, I didn't tell them what happened to me. But my wife had seen it, and she was like, that's unbelievable, because she saw how swollen it was, and so did my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I did not have the presence of mind to take a picture of my leg with my iPhone, but all I know is the blood clot was gone. I'm no longer on Coumadin,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just very grateful.
Wow. Do you know or remember a lot of what the communications was to the images? Do you remember what they said? Was it a detail?
Yeah. Well, some of them I did. For instance, when I was in Boston, this was several years ago, I was there for a workshop, an anti-racism workshop, and I remember this one specifically because they came in. I was staying in a bed and breakfast. By this time, they didn't paralyze me anymore. I guess, I don't know why they paralyzed people. It could be to protect them. But, and the being came in my room, and I was just wasn't ready, obviously. And in my head, he showed me a pair of hands, like praying hands, like two hands clasped together, like praying. And in between them, he showed me, in between the palms, he showed me a red thunderbolt, which I interpreted as energy. And for me, that meant I needed to pray, because the more I prayed, the more this heat would come out of my hands. Now, I am a Reiki practitioner. I don't know what's coming out of my hands now, because every time I have contact with them, the energy is just very strong. But it told me to get my prayer life together and to pray for healing energy, which I do and did. That was very clear. There was one time when they came and they showed me a past life, and how they did it was, my eyes were closed, I was awake, and on one side, it was like a movie screen, on one side where my left eye was, there was a picture of me the way I looked then, modern day, had on a three-piece suit. I was in a pulpit, and I was speaking. And on the right side, where my right eye was, there was a picture of a monk from like the 15th century with the monk's robe and the robe and the rope belt, and the haircut you have where it's like bald on top and a little hair around the side. And so they were showing me a past life.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the two times. Now, when the reptilian came in, which was very scary because the other two were the small people with the egg-shaped head, the pear-shaped head. A reptilian being came in my room. I've seen them twice. And he was, you want to talk about scary, he looked like Spider-Man, only with green alligator skin.
Mm-hmm.
And he sat on my bed, and I felt the bed sink, and he said to me, "You're going to be rich and famous." And he walked out right through my wall. He walked right through my apartment wall on the 15th floor of a high-rise building in Manhattan's Upper West Side.
Mm-hmm.
Now, outside of the fright, James, I can honestly say that no harm has come to me.
Sure.
None of them have harmed me. I'm not rich and famous, so maybe I was lied to. But what has happened, because the next question is, how did this affect you? Well, of course, it made me see that there's other life in the universe, and we're not highest on the food chain. I get by with less sleep. I don't need to sleep as much as I used to. I feel my intuitive capabilities are much, much more sharpened. I mean, you can call it psychic or you can call it intuitive, but those things have been heightened. I don't feel the the separation I felt from the rest of nature. I care much more. I realize that we are all one, and I realize that that's not just a little nice thing to say and let's all sing Kumbaya. That the law of the universe is oneness, and all these problems that we have are because of our belief in separateness and the belief in scarcity. There's not enough love to go around. There's not enough money to go around. There's not enough resources to go around. And that's simply not true, but the belief in that is what causes the strife that we have here. And we believe that we're separate from the planet, so we can rape and pillage and frack and do all these things. Now, I want to be clear here, James. I'm not saying that people have to have somebody from another world come and get that to you. You can learn that on your own, but most of us don't. So to me, those were spiritual changes, my perspective. Now, I'm not as much afraid of death as I used to be. Also, because I realized, I always believed it was life after life, but it really is no death. I'm finding different ways to use my energy, whether it's the Reiki energy or just the energy I expend in my day-to-day relationships with people, places, things. It's just an expansion of consciousness. Last but not least, so you can get a word in edgewise here, is that
Michael, continue.
The beings that I ran into do not mean us any harm. This is not to say that they're, just like they're more evolved in human beings and less evolved, well, they're more evolved extraterrestrial beings and less evolved. Just because one has superior technology does not mean that they have spiritual growth. And I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying the folks who come to me they've expanded, they accelerated my own spiritual growth. Mm-hmm. And so I can only talk about, I don't want to talk about that they were bad people, that they did me any harm. I think we do that with human beings, and if we take that attitude of fear out into the universe, we're going to start a lot of trouble, more trouble than we already have started.
Sure. I guess the effects of your body and the consciousness, do you think it's the whole package? They come to enlighten your body, chakras, soul, and consciousness as an elevation?
I think so. I think so, James. But again, I want to stress that this was the experience I had. I know Bud and I, when Bud was alive, we were in separate camps. Bud, David Jacobs, because they saw this whole phenomenon as a threat to humanity. I don't think that's true. I don't think you can judge a whole lot by a little bit. So people who had ovum taken, women who've had their ovum taken, guys who've had sperm taken, people who've had rectal probes, people who've been taken by force, that's very real. And I don't want to say that's not real. And that's traumatic. And that has to be acknowledged and respected. I'm just saying that wasn't my experience. And so I don't want to stereotype or be xenophobic about all brothers and sisters that are off-planet intelligences are only here to do A, B, C, D. No, some of them are here to help humanity go to the next stage of their development. We are a very warlike and violent species. We really are. And like Dr. King said, it's no longer about violence versus nonviolence. It's about nonviolence versus non-existence. We have the weaponry, the technology to destroy this planet 100 times over. We've got climate change going on. We've got, in our culture here in the United States, 1% of the people own 90% of the wealth. We've got some problems, and we need to look at those problems. But the only way to look at them is to look at ourselves.
Sure, for sure. This is interesting because I don't do a lot of shows on aliens, Michael, and I don't do or UFOs or the whole genre. But I haven't. This is the first time I've ever spoke to a contactee, and the thing is, Michael, just like you've spelled it out there, this is important because every contactee experience is individual. It's like why would it have to be the one stereotype all the time? Why as humans we like to simplify this all the time, and it's a very important point brought up. And I'm glad you stressed that because you're saying that there is other examples out there, but mine's this, and that's the way it is, and it's like
because it's easier to take the world in smaller bites when we define it and then paint with large brushes. I mean, all of these brothers and sisters they all don't have big heads and the wraparound eyes. That's the one we're used to. Some of them look very human. Some of them you could pass on the street. Some of them look like, the praying mantis ones. You've heard of the praying mantis. You've heard of the Nordics or the Swedish looking extraterrestrials. Of course, there's the Greys. There's several different species of Greys. There's the Syrians. Some of them look like me, like light brown. I mean, the universe is teeming with life. And we need to get on board here. And really, most people know that we're not the only people in the universe. I mean, I think at least here in the States, it's got to be over 50% of the people here believe that our government is lying to us about UFOs and that we're not the only people, inhabitants in the universe. And of course, you have Paul Hellyer, the Minister of Defense from Canada. He's been going around saying that there's life in the universe, and that he says the United States is working with at least 4 different extraterrestrial races in Nevada and New Mexico and secret bases. I mean, here you have the ex-Minister of Defense of Canada, Paul Hellyer. You can Google him. His last name is Hellyer, and he's blown the lid off of it. He's been talking about this. He's probably in his 80s now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So here we have a head of state. You also know what happened maybe 3 weeks ago. The Mexican government has always been more open about these types of things, but they released all their Mayan art, the artwork that they have, which depict flying. These look like flying saucers.
Sure, I've seen this.
So I mean, the planet is changing, and we are, human evolution is slow, but it does happen.
Yeah, I just think the government's lying about everything. I don't think it's just UFOs or alien contact, or I think they're lying about the whole thing. I think they're lying about everything. I'm not very trustworthy of governments, Michael.
Well, now remember, you're probably right, but remember now, and this is not to be apologetic for them, that's what governments do. Governments keep secrets. Governments lie. Now, I'm not saying that's right. I don't think it's right at all. I mean, there has to be a higher degree of transparency than what we're getting now. But remember, if you're going to be a superpower, how do you become a superpower? Well, one of the ways is you keep secrets.
Secrecy, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's their nature, isn't it? It's their nature.
It's the nature of governments is to lie.
Yeah. Michael, when you were contacted, did the entities let you know where they came from? Whether that was a placement?
No, they didn't. And you know what? I never thought to ask. As a matter of fact, I didn't even tell anybody about any of this because I was in the closet about it. A friend of mine, he's dead now. He was a very gifted, very humble man, but he was a very gifted psychic. And one day, back in 1993, he gave me a reading. And he said, now I'm going to tell you something, and you're going to think I'm crazy. I said, well, tell me, Gene, whatever. It's okay. He said, there's a lot of little people around you, and you brought them into my house. He said, I'm not angry with you. He said, but you brought these people into my house. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, they're short. He said, they're very playful. They're friends of yours. And he said, they deal with outer space stuff. He said, do you know what I'm talking about? I lied and said, I don't know, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then,
Wow.
then before the reading was over, I did come clean. I said, can I talk to you about it? He said, yeah, you want to put it on tape? And I said, no. He said, okay. And then I said, yeah. And he said, okay. Then I said, no again. And then I did put it on tape. I was just so embarrassed. I mean, I went to a psychiatrist. She told me that I wasn't crazy. She told me that she believed these things were happening, and I wasn't the only person that had happened to. She said, but you know, I can't protect you from them. I can't tell you that they'll stop coming. But at least I knew I was sane, you see. Well, as sane as any one of us can be on planet Earth. And but no, I didn't get to the nuts and bolts of that. What I did get was this insatiable, I had out-of-body experiences where I would feel myself go out through the top of my head, and I would be on the ship in my astral body, and I can understand why they did that, because I was just too afraid to wake up in the middle of the night and to see that. But they did. But I tell you what, I did really. I just had to read. They made me not put a gun up to my head, but every time I met them, it made me want to say, where are they from? What are they doing? Have they? And I, me, because that's my natural inclination. I just went to reading the Bible, and reading the Quran, and reading the Dharmapada, and reading the Upanishad, and reading some Native American stories about the Star People. And then I said, boy, these folks have been here for a long time. And I started putting things together, and I started saying that these people may have been the cause or the originators of our religions.
So I have a copy of the Upanishads behind me there. I actually met a Krishna guy in the city, and I stopped to talk to him, and I said I had Michael Cremo on the show, and he went, oh my God,
Yeah.
He says, Michael Cremo? Yeah, I was like, I just interviewed him last week, and he's so delighted I even knew the subject matter. But anyway, I have the Upanishads behind me there, and I'm actually in the middle of reading a little bit of it, which is fascinating for the listeners, by the way. Just read the Upanishads. These are ancient scriptures, and they're riddled with all sorts of weird and wonderful, fascinating. Perhaps I want to talk a little bit about the Upanishads, Michael, if you like, because I think this is key for people.
Well, I think, okay, first of all, it could be the Vedas, the Upanishads. There's a wonderful book by Richard Thompson called Alien Identities, and he is a Hindu scholar, and he would probably explain it much better than I can. But in these stories, they talk about vimanas, which are flying craft. And whether you're talking about the Mahabharata, and they're talking about these flying crafts and these words, I mean, you're talking about the oldest scriptures on the planet, written in Sanskrit. And they're talking about, the gods. Krishna he's blue colored. You see him portrayed. He's blue. But these beings, pardon me, they're coming from outer space. These are beings that are not from this world. And I started saying, well, then, whether they're talking in Genesis or the Upanishads, or they're talking about in the Quran, where Allah is called Lord of the Worlds, plural. They're talking about beings who come from off-world. They're off-world intelligences, and they're trying to give humankind a jump start on what it's like to be civilized, what it's like to be in relationship with yourself, with oneself, with the planet, with our fellow human beings.
I'm talking right now to you, Michael, and I had an incident during the week, and my friend, who's also a theologian, co-host, and the situation happened. He's trying to show me compassion and mercy, and I just got that, Michael. I just got that understanding of I need to be more compassionate and merciful to a situation and a person, because I have this zero tolerance principle to when somebody is inhumane to another person. I just don't like it. I just don't want to be associated, but I'm going to have to resolve it. Just thought I would share that with you now. Do you think this is why they contacted you, Michael, for things like this, to raise the bar on humanity, to raise the bar of spirituality? Do you think maybe you've been singled out for that perspective?
I do. I do, James, but not in any grandiose, messianic way. I'm not hearing voices and I've come with this mission, but I too, listen, sometimes it's very hard to be a human being. And, the ego is a very powerful thing. And so I'm like you. Sometimes I'm intolerant of intolerance. But in some ways, that's just a subtle way of judgment. And I'm not saying we should all sing Kumbaya. There's some things we have to be intolerant of. But, sometimes I have to remind myself, Michael, do you want to be right or do you want to be at peace? Do you want to be right or do you want to be kind? Do you want to be right or do you want to be more loving or forgiving? And the human ego wants to be right. And I'm constantly in that battle where I have to say, wait a minute, Michael, you've been there before. It's like, you don't, if no one here has made a mistake, then you can throw the first stone. And now, there are some people that I can't get along with, and I just bless them and I go on my way. I don't have to fight with them or argue with them. I'm just trying to expand my consciousness to embrace more of life. I don't have to get along with everybody. That's not what I'm saying. I don't even have to like everybody. But I have to learn to be more accepting. And when I'm more accepting, I'm more forgiving. When I'm more forgiving, I'm less judgmental. And when I'm less judgmental, I'm more loving. Now, someone else may have my experiences, and they may say, I'm really fascinated by how the ships fly. Do they use the power of the mind? What do they use? I want to know the nuts and bolts about how they fly, how they travel from one dimension to another. I'm not interested in that. It's nice to know, but I'm interested in, now that I've had contact with brothers and sisters who are off-world, how is that going to affect the way I get up in the morning and the way I live my life? Am I going to be more loving and accepting? Am I going to be filled more with joy? Am I going to be more human? You see, how is it going to affect me? Now, I'm not saying the other way is wrong. I have more friends who are more scientifically inclined. They don't want to hear all that loving, kumbaya, spiritual. They don't hear all that. And I understand that, but that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. The problem is, Michael, as well, and I'm from a science and engineering perspective, although I don't take that, I take your side because I'm also a very spiritual person, Michael. I like to be, I try to be. I'm not perfect.
You are. We all are.
I'm not perfect.
Mike?
No, I'm not perfect by any means. That's my point. But
it's not about being perfect. But it is about being more self-aware.
Yeah.
More self-aware. The Greeks say, know thyself. Because the greatest enemy that we have is ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know ourselves. We forget where we came from. And so if I forget who I am, then I'm not going to treat you with respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the problem is a lot of left-brainers out there, they just want to go, well, what powered the craft, or what did it look like inside? And, it really is irrelevant. It's a bigger, it's not irrelevant.
No, it's part of it. It's part of it, but it's not the whole part of it. Just like what I'm talking about is not the whole part of it.
What would you do if you knew the knowledge anyway? What would you do with it? It'd be better, if you were to know something, it would be better to know what's their spiritual philosophy, what's their intent, what's their mindset, who's the mind behind the entity? Like, what do they know? What do they want to give? It's like, these are the key questions for me, Michael.
Well, for me, at least from what I've gotten from them, in the sense of whether it's been consciously or not, that they believe in what's called, and this is not news. There's a law of one. There's a law of one, that we're all connected. That literally a butterfly flapping its wings in Hong Kong can cause a tsunami, in California. I mean, I'm using that metaphorically, but what we do to another person, whether it's the planet or whether it's another individual, we do to ourselves. And we have to learn to live as one, or else we're going to perish. It's really that simple. It's really that simple. And so they don't have, at least the ones, they don't have this whole belief in this separation. It's the belief in separation that will do us in. Because there's this part of us that says, well, if James gets all these accolades, then there's not enough accolades for me. If Michael gets all this love and people buy his books, then what's going to be left for me? And it's this whole scarcity principle, that there's not enough.
It's quite the opposite, isn't it, Michael? There's so much.
Yeah, the universe is abundant.
Yeah.
There's enough codependence to go around. There's enough everything to go around.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice talking to you today, Michael, because I always have a great time talking to you. A lovely guy.
Oh, we have a good time. We have a good time.
How has this changed you, Michael, in terms of philosophy? Do you think your philosophy has been better? Obviously you do, but do you think this is a slow, gradual acceptance of what's happened to you as a contactee or experiencer? Do you think this is like, this is raising the bar for you personally as well as trying to give this information to the world?
Yeah, it has. That's a great question. It's made me more courageous in the sense of, I'll give an example, but it's made me move from the intellectual to the heart. An Apache Indian friend of mine told me years ago, we were at a conference in New Mexico, and he said, Michael, the longest difference you'll ever travel is from here to here. And he pointed from his head to his heart. And I'll give an example. A couple of weeks ago, I went to a networking gathering of healers. And it's near here. It's at this place that sells crystals. And, there were healers, acupuncturists, Reiki people, tarot. And I went there. And when it came time for me to introduce myself, I got up in front of strangers and told people that I was a contactee. Now, that's not the only thing. So I talked about my resume and blah, blah, blah. And I just don't care anymore. I'm not walking around with as much fear. Whether people believe me or not, I don't care. When I'm speaking at a Dr. King breakfast this Saturday, I'm the keynote speaker. And when they said, we need a resume from you. And when I said a bio. I sent my bio in, and part of my bio says, Michael Carter is not an experiencer, but he's a frequent consultant on Ancient Aliens, the History Channel's Ancient Aliens, and it talked about my book.
Yeah.
That's big for me, because I would usually keep that very separate, and I don't talk about it with everybody, but I would keep that very separate. But this is part of who I am. And so I don't have as much fear. I don't have as much fear in my personal life. I mean, dealing with people, dealing with my own feelings, learning to say I'm sorry, learning to say I don't know, learning to say I'm scared. I don't have the fear of that as much anymore. And to me, fear is the big enemy, the big one. False evidence appearing real, as a friend of mine says. But I'm living my life less from fear.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't lose with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
I'm making less fear-based choices, fear-based decisions. Not saying that I don't have any fear, and there's some things we need to be afraid of. I'm not a psychopath. But as far as just, you know how it is, fear keeps us from doing the things in life that we want to do. And I'm much less fearful since these contacts than I've ever been in my life. And I'm more willing to risk loving.
So how has this affected you obviously you were talking about the Reiki earlier, has this affected your abilities for Reiki, good or bad?
Yes, it has. I ever since everything is energy, it's just so much stronger. I feel, that when I get someone on the table and I'm working on them, I feel that the energy is still Reiki energy because it means universal energy. We're breathing it in right now, but it's also stronger because it's mixed in with this kind of extraterrestrial energy.
Wow.
So it's just wonderful. Listen, James, I'm living a good life. Mm-hmm. Life is kind. I'm not wealthy, but I'm comfortable. I have a wonderful family. I have more of an attitude of gratitude. I can tell you that since my experiences. And life is good. I still have bills to pay, and I'm trying to make extra money. And I got the church and all that. But my life is good, and I try to remember that when I get stressed out about money or things go on in my life. Is the church growing fast enough, or am I the minister for them? And I have those kind of thoughts, which we all do, but I'm just more appreciative of my life.
Have you got any thing you want to share if somebody was a contactee or an experiencer that hasn't spoke out, is in fear, or is perhaps, confused? Or
I would say this to them. I would say, first of all, trust your heart. And you can't talk about this with everybody. It's taken me 15 years to talk about the things that I'm talking about. Don't compare yourself to other people. Your experiences are real. You can also go to my website and blog me, and we can talk that way if you need a listening ear at michaeljscarter.com. But just follow your heart, and don't, there's some people you can't talk to this about, and that's using common sense. But try to find some like-minded people. If there's support groups in your area. But listen to yourself. Meditate. If you don't meditate, start. If you do meditate, do it a little more. The answers will come to you. What you need, the right person will come your way. The right book will come your way. Just be open. And above all, be thankful. Be thankful. If you've had bad experiences, those are real as well. Try to get some help around that. Seeing a non-judgmental professional. But trust yourself, because you're precious. And your experiences are real, and they shape who you are.
Wow, that's awesome. That's let's hear that, because I mean that's good advice there. It's just that's coming from the heart right there. So I guess just we'll wrap it up on the contactee thing. I mean, Michael, I want to talk to you just before we go. You've given out the website. That was my next question. But what's new for you, Michael? Are you what episodes you've been on? What episodes have you been on recently on it and on Ancient Aliens, or can you talk about that?
Yes, I can. I've been on several episodes. There's one episode called The Power of Three, which you can probably pick up on YouTube now, because I've been, this is their 6th season. Can you believe that? They've been on for 6 seasons. I was on an episode called The Power of Three. Of course, I was on Angels and Sacred Places, Angels and Aliens. I was on an episode called The Satan Conspiracy. There's an episode called Mysterious Relics, The Power of Three. There's an episode, these are all episode 5, Magic of the Gods. And I think that was the last one.
Oh, interesting. Somebody sent me that. My Reiki friend sent me The Power of Three the other day, and I haven't even had a chance to watch it yet. So I'm getting quite excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. It's in my inbox on Facebook. I can't wait to get to it. Like, I will get there. But wow, Michael, it's been an awesome time talking to you again. It's always interesting talking to you, Michael. And it's funny because we can talk theology with you. I can talk about UFOs, and I can also talk about astrology. I don't know anybody else I can do all those three with, Michael. So it's fascinating to talk to you. It really is. Have you got any conferences coming up, Michael? Do you speak at conferences still?
Well, I'm going to start. I haven't as yet. What has happened, Mark, Mark, my publicist, we tried to get some things going. I used to do a little bit of conference work when I was in New York, but we got a late start, so many of the conferences are already booked. So we'll see what happens for 2015. I know there's a new book coming, but I don't know when. It's in my head and in my heart somewhere. But right now I'm just concentrating on this church, and maybe I'll write some articles or something. But, I'm here if you need me. I've been doing a lot of radio interviews. So, that's my cup runneth over.
Well, Michael, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. We're going to just wrap it up at that. I got my next guest coming on, Mr. Bill Burns from UFO Hunters and UFO Magazine, who's also been on Ancient Aliens. So,
yes, I've seen him. Please give him my regards, and I'd like to contact him at some point.
Sure, I'm going to hook you guys up anyway. I have both of you on Skype right beside me here. I've just been talking to Bill while we're talking, and he said I'll pass on the details for sure.
Oh, yeah, please.
Michael, again, always a pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to what's coming up for you in the next year, and the new scripture or new book, and all eyes are on that for me, and I can't wait to see the new episode of Ancient Aliens and see you on the screen again, Michael. It's always good to see you, my friend. So
we'll talk soon, brother. Congratulations, and keep up the good work. Congratulations on your book.
Thank you, Michael. You take care, brother. Talk to you soon.
Okay, God bless. Bye-bye.